Erik Ronningen was in the North Tower when American Airlines Flight 11 struck his building on September 11, 2001. We're in the middle of our interview with him. He just walked down dozens of flights of stairs to safety when the South Tower begins to come down almost on top of him. Were you in the South Tower when it collapsed? You said you were making your way over there?
I was making my way to the South Tower, yes, to get it. The security command center was in one of the 6 basements of the South Tower. And try as I may, I could not get into the basement because the police and firemen were hauling up equipment. So I went into the lobby of the South Tower, and it was the same condition as the North Tower. Huge signage dangling, the elevator doors sprung out, the revolving doors all askew and broken. And as I'm walking through that deserted, dark South Tower, I'm hearing a low, groaning, moaning, grinding sound from somewhere deep within the bowels of the tower. And I was just too tired to even consider what that meant. And of course, in hindsight, it was the beginning of the tower. It was the tower beginning to collapse. But I got out, walked through the mall, got up onto Church Street, and got onto Church Street and turned around and looked up and discovered that not only the North Tower, but the South Tower was fully engulfed in flames in the upper towers also.
We've often heard about the dust and the cloud and whatever it is that was breathed in down there. Did you get caught up in that yourself?
Yes, I did. But let me just give a little prelude to starting. There were thousands and thousands of people on Church Street gawking and looking up. And I knew since I couldn't get down to help in the security command center, I said to myself, well, I'll go into the base of the tower. There must be obviously someone that's not dead that I can help. So just as I was beginning to take the step, I'm walking south. I'm about to go west, to go between the towers, and a little voice in my head said, walk east. There was no reason to disobey that voice. My right foot came down. I did a military left flank, walked maybe a dozen paces when the earthquake began. I thought that the Church Street was going to collapse into the subway system, and we were all going to slide into the subway. But that didn't happen. I turned around to watch the South Tower begin its collapse. And just for an instant, I was afraid, thinking that tower is going to come down and fall on and kill us all. And in the same instant, it was, well, there it is. Where can you run to escape a quarter-mile-high building? So the panicking crowds, boy, you never want to get caught up in a panicking crowd. It was instantaneous. So I matched my pace with theirs, worked my way to the south side to the right, and I tucked myself behind a column of the loading dock of the Millennium Hotel. Let the crowds pass, watched the shrapnel go by, saw ladies' high heels and men's loafers flying through the air. And when the crowd somewhat dissipated, I stepped out and turned west to go back to the towers. It was at that point I saw that 800-foot-high pyroclastic cloud of pulverized concrete, sheetrock, porcelain, furniture, and whatnot barreling down on us. And I was so exhausted, I said, I will never be able to survive another one of these things. But that little voice in my head said, walk east. I turned around. I walked as fast as I could, keeping an eye on that pyroclastic cloud. And just as it hit, I took a big, deep breath, and there was instant darkness, pitch black. And the screaming, yelling crowd totally went silent. And I'm still walking as fast as I can. I tried to tuck my nose under my jacket to see if I could breathe. That didn't work. So I kept walking, and as far as I could, and then I finally had to inhale. And it was like inhaling the grit from a Sahara sandstorm. Rick, that grit was so thick, it immediately impacted my throat. My eyes were frozen over. My nose was impacted. My ears were clogged with this grit. And I could only take a couple of breaths of this, and that was the end of that. And I kept on walking. And finally, I walked as far as I could go. And I said to myself, it's time to meet my maker. I'm not going to get out of this. My knees were beginning to collapse. I was going down. And just to my right, there was a little fuzzy movement that was totally different than the vibration of that cloud. So I gave it everything I had, stood, turned to that fuzzy movement, reached out, and touched a man who was opening the back door of a delicatessen. I followed him in. The staff was handing out liquids. They gave me a bottle of water. I took a big gulp, swallowed all that stuff, and I was able to breathe again. And that was the beginning of the first hour and a half of my day on September 11th, 2001.
I know you do have a book. What is your message in there, and what is your message for America 23 years later?
Well, my goodness, yes. The second night I was sitting up talking with my wife about this, and the thought was put into my head, and it said, write a book. Well, I'm not a writer. We write the occasional memo and now emails. But I did. I selected some people that were in various different conditions, and they agreed to give me their story. So I wrote a book about how 15 of us escaped the towers that morning. I tried to write it dispassionately, letting people that were reading it come to their own conclusions. And, of course, there are always lessons to be learned, such as live each day as if it were your last is one of my favorites, because you never know if this is your last day on Earth or not. And how do you want to leave your lasting impressions? There were many businessmen that I spoke to that in the financial industry especially that said that they were totally reevaluating their life, spending more time with their families. Business was still important, but not the 18-hour days as it was. And so, what's important in our lives?
Mr. Ronningen, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate it. God bless you.